Hi, I'm Mark Nickerson. Welcome to another edition of East Lyme Issues and Answers. Mark Nickerson, your first selectman. With me today is our deputy first selectman, Kevin Seery. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
We've worked alongside one another for a couple of years now as I've assumed the seat, and I must say it's a thankless job. All the time that you put in committee meetings and subcommittee meetings, even just discussions around the water cooler. It's a lot of time and energy and talent that one must put into some of our volunteer jobs, and especially the deputy first selectman. Thank you for all that you do.
Oh, it's really a pleasure. Like I said, we've talked about this in the past. It's great to be able to give back to a community that offers so much to us. It's a great community, wonderful people. It's a pleasure to serve, very much so.
We're going to talk about independent police tonight, but first let's talk about your resume, even though you're not the subject of the show today, but you are my guest, so we always give a chance to get to know the person sitting in the other seat. You've served this town for a number of years.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have.
Tell me about it.
I was elected to the Board of Education in 1997, served 14 years on that, came off in 2011. I served as chair of the board for 6 of those years, and in 2011 I made the switch and very much appreciate the town's people elected me to the Board of Selectmen in 2011, and I've been there for the last 5 years and almost the last 2 years as your deputy. So it's really a thrill to be able to serve the community in which one lives, and such a great community too. I mean, we're always sort of an example, not an example, but a town that everyone loves to come to, and if you just meet our townspeople and so forth, you understand why. It's a great town.
And I always say the difference in our town is the people, the people that care and that put their time and talent into whatever organization or nonprofit or commission or a group that they put into, whether it's Little League or the library or Cub Scouts or church groups or youth groups, whatever it is. There's so many people that are doing so much. I hate to say it takes a village, but we have a heck of a village. How's that?
Very much
Your
so.
Career, let's talk about what you did outside of town. You spent a number of years as a state trooper.
State trooper. I started out actually in 1986 as a part-time police officer in the town of East Lyme, and then got hired by the state in early 1987, where I served until 2015, 28 and a half years. I was assigned to Troop K in Colchester, and the last 22 and a half years I was there, out of the 28 and a half, I was the resident trooper in Salem, which is sort of a sister community of ours. We share a high school together. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of interaction between the two towns, so even though I was in an adjoining town, I still interacted on a regular basis, work-wise, with the East Lyme PD and school system and so forth. It was a great job. It's the best job in the state police was the resident trooper in Salem.
And that's where the segue starts. That's where the right host here would say, okay, and because you're a resident state trooper, we are going to talk about police today. We're going to talk about the historic vote that the Board of Selectmen took in moving our police force to an independent police force. There's been discussions, there's been articles in the paper. We hit NBC News the other day with it. I want to talk about the details of it for the folks that are busy getting the kids to school on the bus and running to work and coming home and getting dinner on the table and not really paying attention to it. We'll talk about some of the fine details of what this all means. And you're a great guest today because you come from the other side. You were a resident state trooper. Bottom line, 101, Police Management 101 is we have voted to remove ourselves from the resident state trooper system in the state of Connecticut, which means, and what we've been doing since the 50s, is we've had and paid for a resident state trooper, or a state trooper, to be the leader, to be the supervisor, the management of our police force. And many, many, many years ago when we started this, we were a town of 3,500 people. We only had a few part-time police officers. We're talking back in the 50s or 60s. And we have grown to a town of just under 20,000 people with beaches and state parks and facilities and a population that doubles in size in the summertime and many, many needs of our police force. We've also grown to 22 full-time police officers. They're sworn, they've gone through the academy that we send them to, the training, the certification. They are true police officers, yet they run under the management of a resident state trooper. And really that program served us well for decades. Let's make sure we reiterate that we are well served by the resident state trooper system. However, we've grown to a size where we don't really fit into the resident state trooper system the way it was designed. Like Salem, for instance, you were a resident state trooper in Salem. How big was the force in Salem?
Well, when I got to Salem, the force was 3, myself and 2 full-time officers. They had all fully trained and so forth like that. But that was it. We had roughly about 3,000 people in town when I got there, a little under 4,000 when I left. And the resident trooper program was designed perfectly for towns like Salem. That's where it just worked so well. As time went on, one of our officers retired. Another one, unfortunately, got ill and passed away. So the town made a decision to hire a second resident trooper. So for the last 13 years I was there, we had 2 resident troopers. That's very cost effective for a town such as Salem because the state police provide coverage when we're not there.
Right.
And that's just it. With 2 resident troopers, you've got coverage for roughly about 80 hours a week. The barracks patrols on midnights and on shifts when we're not there. But that person also is patrolling other towns as well. But cost effectiveness is there because if a resident trooper gets sick or hurt, the state has to replace them.
They just pop another one
They'll
in.
put another one there, no added cost to the town. But if the town of Salem had stayed with full-time officers and one got sick or got hurt or left to go to another position, then the only way to fill that is with overtime, and it does get to be a little bit cost prohibitive. And you don't have to worry about purchasing equipment for resident troopers. But now East Lyme's to the point where, as Mr. Nickerson said, we have 22 full-time officers. It is hard for someone to supervise them when they're taking orders from the barracks up in Montville, and then the barracks in Montville takes their orders from the district commander and then from Middletown, where the state police headquarters is. It removes the people making decisions. There's so many layers removed from the day-to-day operations that we have right now.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. And so really the distinction is, the resident state trooper was designed for these rural towns. Go up 395, most of the towns are resident state trooper. Go down the shoreline, most aren't, because you have some, bigger towns, the Brantfords, the Guilfords, even Old Saybrook, and of course Old Lyme still has a resident state trooper. They have 1 or 2 full-time officers, but in our case we have 22 officers. Could use a few more, frankly. Our town is so busy, and there's no comparison when you have a rural town like a Salem compared to our town with a bustling downtown, the beaches, the boardwalk, the state police, the prisons even draw some of our power, and of course a very busy highway in an interchange highway with 395 running right through our town, which takes up a lot of our first responders, too often, in fact. So I'm coming into the job a couple years ago and have this glaring issue staring at me, and then start a discussion with police, with former first selectmen and women, and talk about where we've been and where we should go. What's the police force going to look like today and in the future? And I made that after a lot of research and information gathering. I made the decision that we really should go to an independent police force, and then began gathering facts and information to be clear on that decision. Brought in the first selectman, formulated a task force to look at the information that was gathered independently. I give most credit to our police sergeants, who I gathered together in several meetings and said, you guys do the work, do the history, go over to Ledyard and talk to the force there, where they have just switched over to an independent police force. Go talk to Montville, where they unsuccessfully tried to do it, and learn from their mistakes. Let's talk to Waterford. Let's talk to the Police Chiefs Association of Connecticut, et cetera, et cetera. So we gathered all this information from many different places, and the police sergeants of the East Lyme Police Department I give full credit for bringing us all together. This move should be a cost-neutral move. In other words, if we stayed with the resident state trooper, or we put a police chief in that corner office in the back, the cost would be the same. That's not saying the costs will be going up in the years to come. We might need more police officers. We as a town will have that conversation and make that decision. We might need a new police. We do need a new police building. That's not part of the vote that happened this week. That conversation needs to happen. That decision needs to come. But frankly, we need to build schools first. We need to figure out what we're doing with these elementary schools. And I know the school department with the design committee are working real hard to come up with a final answer on what they want to do. They're moving toward a decision of refurbishing the schools that we already have versus tearing down the buildings we have and building new ones. And I support that decision, is utilizing the fine buildings we have and cleaning them up, putting new air handlers in, security issues, windows, and freshening up the insides. After all, the magic of these schools, and we have award-winning schools, the magic is in the inside of those classrooms. It's the teachers and it's the parents that are so constantly involved with the teaching process in East Lyme. So my hope, my goal in all of this was to have better accountability by having our police chief, who is a town employee appointed by a police commission that is now being formulated, for better oversight, for better management, for better accountability, for better mentorship, for continuity of management. You know, when you're in the state trooper system, every 3 years or so on average, you get a new one. And that's just how the system is set up. Typically you don't lock into an 8 or 10 year tenure. You get them from time to time. We were fortunate to have Bill Blanchette for 7 or 8 years in East Lyme. Salem was very fortunate to have my guest, Kevin Seery, for a number of years over in Salem. But we need better accountability and someone who answers to the taxpayers, the citizens, the police commission, the board of selectmen here in East Lyme. That's going to be responsible for the promotion of our men and women that serve us, for the hiring of people to replace these people, for the budget, that when they go over budget, there's someone accountable. Right now, really it's really kind of up in the air, frankly. And again, I always want to reiterate, we've been well served by resident state troopers over the years, including our current one, Jeff McDermott. He's a fine man, a fine individual, and is serving us well. In no time has East Lyme citizens been underserved or been at risk. We have fine men and women who serve us daily. We could just do it better, more efficiently, with better value. Frankly, now reports are made in duplicate. There's a state police report that our men and women have to type into, and our own police reporting system. We have multiple radios that they have to talk into. There's the state police, and we have our own radio system in East Lyme, and a number of different other things. So, good things are happening. It was a historic vote at the Board of Selectmen level. It's an ordinance, so it doesn't have to go to a town meeting or a town referendum. There's not a money situation here, so it's really just a policy change. This does not have anything to do with the building. I just mentioned the police building, and we can talk about that. A number of years ago, there was I think a $12 million proposal to build a public safety complex.
I believe it was a little bit more than that. I think it was in the area of 14
is
plus. I think I could
yeah.
be wrong if I think there was a little over 14 million was the proposal that would have been back in 2005, I think is when we voted.
Yeah, it was at least
the
10
town
years
went to
ago.
referendum on that.
Yeah, and it failed. It was frankly too large a building for this town, and it happened at the wrong time as well. Prior to that, there was a $6 million proposal to build a multi-use facility at the National Guard facility, now known as Camp Niantic. And we would have used that alongside of the National Guard, and that was a proposal that failed. It didn't go to referendum. It failed at the Board of Finance level. And prior to that, there was one even several years ago to be built behind the high school. And many citizens came together to come up with that proposal, but it never passed. It never went anywhere. At some point, we do need to look at a complex. I think we're still a handful of years away from having that happen. The facility we have now is
Adequate.
overused. It's adequate,
yeah.
and it's safe. That's a good word. It's adequate. But we have 10 men and women that we expect to act as professionals, but we don't give them necessarily professional space to act within. So we'd like to bring all our services on board with this new police commission and independent police force. We're going to be looking to Waterford to rent some space from their police building. In other words, the jails and some of the records and evidence lockup. We'll use Waterford, and they're our sister town. They're our twin city, if you will. They're our big brother when it comes to some of this stuff. They've already had an independent force for as long as I can remember, maybe forever. And we'll use some of that. But at some point, we're going to want to bring those services in town and build a proper police building. It might be a public safety building. It might include dispatches, which I'm sure it would include. It would also might include one of our fire stations to be in-house, and maybe a better facility for our emergency management or fire marshal's office, etc. More to be determined on that. We don't have a plan. There isn't a secret plan. I'm full transparency here. We just know that day is going to come. But we do need to work on our schools first and kind of lock that down. That's how any business would manage their facilities in the different departments, and that's how we intend to do it here in East Lyme. We did talk about police department facilities in Waterford. Do you know a little bit about policing, since you are a retired police officer?
Somewhat,
28
yes. and a half
years total. Does that include the East Lyme time?
That would make it about 29 and a half years.
Outstanding. Kevin, what happens? What is the difference between what we could do in East Lyme? There's I call it catch and release. That's more of a fishing term, I think.
Yeah,
but, but what do I know? But then there's the lockup where you need a jail cell and you need bail. You're going to take people to court the next day and all that. Tell me the difference.
Well, and to be honest with you, in most cases, if someone's arrested for something, for instance, it's a shoplifting case, or it's two people get into a skirmish and on the corner of the street or something like that, and they're not related, so it doesn't become domestic violence. A lot of times what you'll do is you'll take them to a facility, a secure facility, you'll process them, fingerprint them, read them their rights, do the whole processing and enter all the information on them, and then you'll release them on either a non-surety bond or a promise to appear, and they'll be given a court date. And then in about an hour or so, they're gone. You'll only do this in a less secure facility where you have what's called a cage area, where you take them in. It's kind of like a chain link, chain fence, and you open and shut the door. It's
secured.
In a secure area.
Yeah.
And this would be an area where the police officer would be able to process and release them. It takes about an hour, because right now, if we have to take someone to the barracks in Colchester, it can be anywhere from 15 to a 30-mile round trip, and then they're out of town for about 2.5 hours. So we haven't even really gotten into the soft cost of how much does it cost to have transport up and back and so forth like that. And then if the person gets released a few hours later, we have to go back up and release them. And the vast majority of the cases, I would say, are that where you'll process them and release them. If it's a drunk driving arrest, domestic violence, where you might place a bond on somebody because you want to be sure that everybody is safe, or if you're arrested on a warrant or a more serious crime, or a crime of violence and the person could be dangerous, you're going to take them to a more secure facility. In this case, it would be the Waterford Police Department, where you have actual jail cells, you have more people there present. In the event that somebody becomes unruly, you'll have assistance. So that's an area where you'll take someone if they're going to be held for any length of time, possibly overnight.
So let me stop you there. So right now, every person that we want to arrest or just issue a summons to, one of these catch and releases is what I call them, but the quick 2-hour thing, everybody has to be processed through Montville. And going, is that right?
If it's a custodial arrest where someone is actually put in handcuffs and taken into custody, they have to go to the barracks in Montville.
And that's, according to my police records, it's about 250 to 300 people a year. Our police force has got to go through this process. Now we'll be able to have a small facility within our police department in a police building on Main Street that can do these quick summons things, the light stuff, as you mentioned, the heavier lockup stuff, the drunk driving, the domestic situations. and the heavier major crimes would go to Waterford. That's about 50 to 75 people a year. So we'll really be able to be more efficient in that our cops would be able to process things within our town and then get back out on the street, which is important too. But when you started talking about that, you triggered a thought. There was a point of conversation at a public hearing a couple weeks ago at the Board of Selectmen level, and that is the major crimes that the Connecticut State Police offer our town when there's a murder. We found the skeletal remains of someone off of Sleepy Hollow Road a couple weeks ago. We would always bring in major crimes, the Connecticut Major Crimes Unit, on major cases. Not always, but when we needed to, when we didn't have our own facilities and talent. Is that right?
That's correct. What you have is your chief or whoever was the ranking officer at the scene could request either directly through the state or through the state's attorney's office the assistance of the major crime squad for a serious crime. For instance, the skeletal remains would be one. A murder or a serious assault would be another one. An arson case or something like that. There are serious crimes that the state's attorney would probably direct the state police to come in and process the scene. If we needed, we hope we never need it, but if we ever needed a SWAT team, the state would still provide that. Dog, bomb squad, again, something you hope you never need.
So do we lose any services from the state police by going to an independent force?
No, you don't lose any services, except for the fact that now you don't have a dedicated trooper assigned to the town.
Right.
You'd have a chief assigned to the town who would be responsible to the police commission and ultimately the citizens of the town.
Many people don't know, so we have our own computer systems in the cars. We have our own radio systems. We have a lot of the hardware, the capital expenses we already have, because we are a full force. We have two full-time detectives on board. We have 2 canine units on board. So we're not a podunk Mayberry RFD kind of police station. The cops laughing over here. No, we're a full-fledged police department. As you know, if you've had to call our police at any point in time, you know that we have professional people who are making a career of serving our town. So major crimes covered. We don't lose anything from state police. When we call on them, they'll be there. When we don't need them, when our detectives could work on a particular issue or our canine units are in need, we have them. The police commission itself, the Board of Selectmen voted the other evening to establish a police commission whose responsibilities will be to put together a policy and procedure manual. We already have one. We'll fine-tune it a bit as it pertains to independent police. They will hire a police chief. We'll do a national search and put the right man and woman in that job. And they will also secure other details like the certifications that will be required for going independent police with our dispatch and our police officers. So we're having 7 people on the police commission. One person will be the sitting first selectman, whoever he or she will be, and we'll appoint 6 people with alternating expiration times, so that all 6 don't come on and off at the same time. And those people will be appointed by the Board of Selectmen, all 6 of us. And I think I kind of wanted to get that out there today. Anything else that we haven't talked about?
The one thing I'd like to add is we have some extremely well qualified and well trained police officers and detectives. Mark Cuomo and Gene Kavanaugh are the best as far as investigating what their specialties are. Mark is well respected statewide, and he teaches classes at colleges based on all he's done, and at his own expense to become the best detective possible. Jean has been invested in the community for a lot of years. She's an extremely good examiner for cases of child abuse, sex assault. There's just no one better. We have some fantastic supervisors, and this move allows us to do that. Right now, occasionally, we could have a sergeant come down from the barracks who really has no knowledge of what goes on in the town, and he would overrule our sergeant that works here now. Right. And I'm not saying the state doesn't have great leaders. They do. It was an organization I was very proud to be part of. Yeah. and I would do it all over again if I had to. We have some excellent people in that department. But this allows that ownership, that, you know, they feel ownership of you know, the investigation and so forth. I think we're going to provide a much better product to the town people because we'll have our own people making the decisions at all levels.
That's terrific. Kevin, we're proud of you, the time you've served as a Connecticut State Trooper, all those many decades now. It's decades that you have served this town on various boards and commissions and as Deputy First Selectman. Kevin Seery has been my guest today as here on Issues and Answers as our Deputy First Selectman, and gave us some good insight on the independent police force that is coming our way. Just a couple notes around town. We only have a minute left. We had a great trick-or-treat thing happen down on Main Street. Did you see all the kids? Did you get a chance to see the video if you weren't there? It was double in size. I think the great weather, I think, you know, I think East Lyme is just popping in downtown Niantic especially. The holiday stroll, we'll jump right forward to the holiday stroll. It's always a Saturday after Thanksgiving where we light the Christmas tree and and the stores have specials and there's hay rides and it's, you know, it's official welcoming of the holiday season to downtown Niantic, and we want you to shop local. We want you to go downtown and buy some gifts downtown. Our shop owners have great things on the shelves. I want you, we really hope that you spend some time down there and see if you can support our local economy. That will be on November 26th. Deputy First Selectman Kevin Seery will be lighting the Christmas tree this year, I'm told. I can't guarantee that, though. There might be somebody else in line. December 10th, people are already calling my office asking when the light parade is. The Jingle Jam, the Jingle Run for the Brian T. Daigle Foundation will be in the morning at Hole in the Wall. The light parade is at night. That's December 10th. It's a Saturday with a rain date of the 11th. Make sure you stay in East Lyme. Make sure you have a great and safe holiday season. We'll see you next time on East Lyme Issues and Answers.